never thought I'd live to see such a sight. A tiny life, barely a month old, bound tight in filthy nylon netting and thrown straight down a storm drain like a sack of trash. The last faint light inside it was smothered by the black water below, thick with chemicals and rotting remains. And yet, in the stench of death, a thin whimper, sharp as a needle, still managed to pierce through the cast-iron cover and rise up to the cold pavement where I stood. It wasn't even a cry. It was so faint it could have passed for a final breath, slipping from a body giving up. If I had walked just 5 steps faster that day, or if a bus had roared past a second longer, no one would ever have heard it. And that little one would have vanished forever. That Cleveland afternoon carried the color of lead, heavy enough to dull even the familiar red brick rows of the narrow street. I pulled my collar higher, walking slowly toward the house at the end of the alley, where an old armchair and a weak cup of tea were all I needed to ease the ache. At 62, after 3 decades on the force, what folks called police instinct should have been buried with the badge, but it never left me. And on that day, it saved another life. The first sound came as thin as wind itself, tangled between the rattle of a plastic bag in the fence and the distant hum of cars. I stopped. My worn boots went still on the cracked sidewalk. My chest tightened. My heart thudded like it was waiting for a familiar signal. Then it came again. A whimper. Short, choked, so fragile it seemed the breeze might shred it to nothing. But I had heard too many sounds like that in my time. The muffled sobs behind closed doors, the broken pleas swallowed by darkness. And I knew. Something was wrong beneath my feet. I bent down. Right before me was the old iron cover, rim rusted, scarred by years of wear. I slid 2 fingers into the narrow groove and pulled. It was locked in place, like concrete. I clenched my teeth, pouring every ounce of strength from my shoulder to my back. The metal screamed like the earth itself was protesting. The lid shifted just enough, a crack wide enough to let a wave of foul air blast my face. That smell I'll never forget. Stagnant water, rotting trash, and the rust of forgotten things. I staggered back half a step, hand covering my nose, but my eyes stayed fixed on the darkness below. And I saw it. A small body, tangled in green netting, wedged against the slimy bricks. A Doberman puppy, no bigger than my hand, fur black and slick with mud, eyes clamped shut. Its whole frame trembled as if every cell was fighting off the cold cutting into its core. I could see its ribs spasm in weak, uneven pulls. My heart jolted. The same shock I had felt in moments when life and death balanced on a breath. All the weariness, all the dull weight pressing on me moments before, vanished like smoke. The world shrank until it was only me and that fragile soul dangling on the edge. I pressed my hand hard against the groove of the iron cover, whispering through ragged breaths, "Hold on. Don't give up. I'm here now." The stench, the strain, the metal grinding, they clashed together into a brutal chorus in my ears. But within all that noise was a smaller rhythm, fragile yet impossible to ignore, the trembling of a life that still wanted to live. And I knew, retired or not, badge or no badge, I was still a cop. And on that gray afternoon on that forgotten street, I had no choice but to honor the vow I once swore, to protect the weak and to stand against the dark. I clenched my teeth, pressing both hands against the gap of the iron cover, forcing every ounce of strength through my body. My aging muscles fought back, but I gave them no choice. With a piercing screech, the lid tilted just enough. I gasped for air, then lowered a tied rope through, threading it around the net that strangled that tiny body. "It's all right, little girl. Don't be afraid. I'm not leaving you here," I muttered, my voice shaking from the strain as much as from the pounding of my heart. I pulled. Each tug felt like wrestling a slab of steel. The net lifted inch by inch, heavy with water, burning raw against my palms. Then at last, the small body came free of the drain. A drenched figure, mud dripping onto the pavement. She lay curled tight, too weak to make a sound. Her left eye was still swollen shut, the right half open, gaze blurred, caught between two worlds. I dropped to my knees, stripped off my old fleece, the one that had carried me through 100 storms, and wrapped her inside it. The moment the fabric touched her, she gave a faint hiss, so small, like a last grasp for something to hold on to. I whispered, "It's over now. You're not in the dark anymore. I'm taking you home." I pressed her against my chest, felt her trembling shoot through my ribs. The shivers were sharp, relentless, like tiny knives. I knew, without warmth, without a doctor soon, her body would give up within minutes. Before I could rise, a rough, jagged voice cut from behind me. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I spun around. A man blocked the alleyway about 20 paces off, broad like an old wardrobe, belly straining against the faded flannel stretched across him. His face was lined and sour, small eyes glaring at me with contempt under heavy brows. I didn't move, still holding the pup tight. "I just pulled her from the drain," I said, calm but low, steady. He snorted, mouth curling. "Pulled her out? You call that saving? That trash should have died down there." My blood boiled, but I held myself. Too many years on the force taught me that silence could be more dangerous than a drawn gun. I tightened my arms around her, lowered my head so her shallow breath pressed against my skin. She trembled, let out a faint whine, as if she too sensed the danger still close. "She didn't deserve this," I said quietly. "She's just a puppy." He barked a dry laugh. "Just a dog. And not every dog's worth keeping. Look at her eye. Clouded. Defective. You toss defective stock, simple as that. You just ruined my cleanup." His words landed like a punch to the gut. I looked down at her. One tiny paw slipped from the fleece, curling as if grasping for something unseen. She trembled weakly, but she still clung, still wanted to live. I lifted my gaze, voice deepening. "You did this?" He shrugged, casual as if talking about garbage. "Expensive dogs you sell. Broken ones you dump. Toss them in a drain, clean, gone, no one ever finds them. You ought to thank me." My hands shook, not from fatigue but from anger straining at its leash. But I knew, one wrong move and he'd grow cautious. I had to play the part, had to wear the mask of the soft, gullible old man. I steadied my breath, made my tone falter. Maybe you're right. I just thought, if she was still breathing, she was worth the try." He sneered, stepping closer. "You're weak. People like you ruin this world." I nodded faintly, lowered my face, hiding the spark that had just flared in my eyes. In my pocket, my thumb had already opened the recorder app. A tiny red light blinked silently, swallowing every boastful confession that dripped from his mouth. I stroked the pup gently through the fleece and whispered, "I promise, you won't tremble in the dark anymore." Behind me, his mocking laughter echoed down the damp alley. He didn't know that every word he'd just spat was another link tightening the chain that would bind him. I held her tighter in my arms, feeling the fragile tremor of life like the last thread left to cling to. The man before me kept sauntering closer, his eyes dripping with contempt, as if he alone had the right to decide the worth of life and death. "I told you already," he spat, dropping saliva on the curb. "This thing is a waste of money. A defective dog, cloudy eye, Nothing but trouble. Can't sell. Throw it away and be done. Simple. I kept my face calm, though fire churned inside. Years as a detective had taught me one thing. Men who think they hold power always dig their own graves with their mouths. All I had to do was let him talk. I gave a slow nod, lowered my voice to a frail murmur, the part of a feeble old man. Maybe. You're right. I don't know much. I just saw her breathing and thought, saving her was better than leaving her. His crooked grin stretched wider. See? That's the problem. People like you think with their hearts, not their heads. The dog business isn't a joke. Folks pay thousands for a pure Doberman, but you hand them one with a clouded eye? They'll send it back, smear your name, sue you. So why keep it? Cut your losses. Each word landed like a knife. I nodded and played the fool, while inside my coat pocket, my phone was recording every syllable, that small red dot blinking steadily as a patient heartbeat. I don't understand much, I stammered, looking down at the pup burrowing into my jacket. You mean business? He stepped closer, the stench of old tobacco and sweat thick in the air. That's right. I breed, I sell. No taxes, no paperwork, all cash. If the government can't see it, it doesn't exist. Clean profit. I furrowed my brow, feigning confusion. But what about ones like her? Dispose of them, he shrugged, like tossing aside a bent nail. Nobody buys broken stock. Keeping them just bleeds money. Dump them in the woods. Somebody might stumble on them. The drain's different. Once they're down there, no one ever knows. They vanish. That's clean. In my mind, the pieces locked together. This wasn't a one-time act. This was a system, an underground network thriving in the city's shadow. And before me stood a man bragging as though he had discovered some brilliant trade secret. I forced my voice weak, pretending I still didn't grasp it. So, all because of a cloudy eye? He nodded, his face flushed with sick pride. Exactly. A dog without value has no reason to exist. That's the law of the game. The weak, the defective, they get culled. That's how survival works. I lowered my gaze to the half-open eyes of the little girl in my arms. She shivered at the sound of his voice, then pressed herself closer into my chest, searching for the only safety left to her. In that moment, I saw it clearly. Her very existence was proof of the lie behind his so-called law. I looked back up, my voice catching. How many have you done this to? He gave a dry laugh. Plenty. Enough to know no one will ever find out. No trail, no papers, no evidence. My heart pounded, not from fear, but from the certainty that I now had everything, a confession clear as day, spoken with pride. All I needed was for him to keep talking a little longer. Each word was another loop in the rope he was weaving around his own neck. I nodded slowly, let my voice tremble like a naive old man. I don't know. Sounds so cold. He leaned closer, dropping his tone as if sharing a precious secret. That's how the world works, old man. Either you harden up, or you get swallowed. I kept my eyes vacant, while inside, my heart turned to stone. He had just seated himself in the defendant's chair, and I knew when the time was right, the same net he used to bind this pup would be the net of the law tightening around him. I pressed my cheek to the puppy's head, whispering for her ears alone. Don't be afraid. You're not in the dark anymore. He thinks he decides your fate, but he's wrong. Dead wrong. I let him talk, let each poisoned word fall into the trap already laid. But then I knew. It was time to change the role. No more the frail old man. No more the fool easy to lead. I bent down and kissed the trembling head of the puppy in my arms, whispering, "It's all right, little girl. Now it's my turn." I set her down on the cement step at my feet, wrapped safe in the warm fleece. Then I straightened up. My shoulders squared, my back rose straight, the way it had in the days I wore the uniform. The fatigue of 62 years fell away, replaced by the authority carved into me by decades on the street. The man blinked, stepped back half a pace, startled by the sudden change. "You've said enough, Silas," I said, my voice low and hard, like steel striking steel. "Far too much." He frowned, then barked a coarse laugh. "What did you just call me?" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I reached into my coat pocket, pulled out an old leather wallet, and flipped it open. The Cleveland police badge gleamed in the gray light. "Franklin Hayes, retired detective, and I've recorded every word of your confession." I turned the phone in my hand, the red light blinking, the minutes of recording ticking away. His face drained in an instant, flushed red with pride 1 second, bloodless white the next. You set me up?" "This is a trap." I stepped forward, eyes locked on him. "No. You spoke freely. Every word, every detail. You admitted to tossing this puppy into the drain, running an illegal breeding operation, dodging taxes and abusing animals. All of it. Right here, I raised the phone so the light caught in his eyes. Silas growled, throat tight. You can't do this. I cut him off, voice sharp as a hammer strike. "You'll do nothing. You'll turn around, put your hands behind your back, and stay silent. Or I call in a patrol right now." The air stretched taut as a wire. I could hear the puppy's shaky breath at my feet, the wind sweeping through the alley. The world narrowed to just him and me, 2 old men locked in a standoff that needed no guns but carried the weight of 1,000 bullets. His eyes darted, calloused hands twitching, half ready to lunge, half ready to run. I knew that type, the bully who thrived on the weak, but shriveled when faced with a wall that didn't budge. "Who do you think you are trying to play me?" He roared, his voice breaking, pitched too high. I held my gaze cold as iron. "The only one standing between you and the darkness you created. And believe me, Silas, this time, the darkness will swallow you." The words fell like a sentence. Just then, from a distance, the wail of a siren rose, a patrol car on its way. He heard it, and his face twisted. He stumbled back, ready to bolt. I lifted the phone to my mouth and pressed the button. "Dispatch, this is Hayes. I've got a suspect, name's Silas Danner, who confessed to animal abuse and running an illegal dog breeding ring. I need units at Willow Creek Lane immediately." The radio crackled back. "Copy that, Hayes. Nearest unit will be on scene in 5 minutes." Silas cursed, eyes wild. "You old bastard. You'll regret this." I didn't blink. "No, Silas. The only one who will regret anything here is you." He stood frozen, fists clenching and unclenching, his body shaking, not from the cold but from panic rising fast. The siren drew nearer, red and blue lights flashing against the brick wall at the end of the alley. I bent down, lifted the little Doberman into my arms. She opened her eyes, wet pupils trembling as if to ask, "Are we safe?" I stroked her head gently and whispered, "Yes, little girl. We're safe now. And he'll never do this to anyone again." Red and blue sirens bounced off the stained brick walls, slicing through the gray Cleveland afternoon. 2 patrol cars skidded to a stop, lights flashing like the heartbeat of an emergency. 2 young officers, Chen and Riley, stepped out, hands resting at their belts, eyes sharp with caution. "Mr. Hayes?" Chen called. I nodded, holding the puppy tight in my arms. Suspect's right there. Confessed everything. Recordings here. I raised my phone, the red light still blinking. Silas stood frozen, sweat streaming down his flushed face. Riley moved in, cuffs drawn, his voice crisp. Silas Danner, you're under arrest for suspected animal abuse and operating an illegal breeding facility. Turn around. Hands behind your back. He cursed, jerked, but his legs felt chained to the ground. At last, the cold snap of steel locked around his calloused wrists. He was shoved into the car, the door slammed, and he vanished with the growl of the engine. I exhaled, but relief never came. My heart thudded harder as I felt the tiny body in my arms weakening. Her head dropped into the crook of my elbow, breath rattling, belly heaving irregularly. I turned to Chen. I need to get her to the clinic now. She won't last long. Chen nodded quickly, his eyes softening. Go, mister. Hayes. We'll handle the rest. I ran, legs forgetting their age, pounding down the wet street. Marigold Clinic came into view at the corner, its old wooden sign weathered but lights still burning inside. I shoved the door open, the bell clanging like an alarm. Dr. Marissa Hale looked up from her desk. Her hair was half silver, eyes sharp behind thin glasses. The moment she saw the soaked bundle in my arms, her face flashed with alarm. On the table now, she barked. I laid the pup on the steel slab, fleece drenched with dirty water and blood. Marissa placed her hands on its chest, brow furrowing. Weak pulse. Severe hypothermia. Fluid in the lungs. A nurse fitted a tiny oxygen mask over its muzzle. The monitor beeped, numbers tumbling. 92, 88, 84. My throat closed tight. Does she have a chance? I rasped. Marissa met my eyes, steady but urgent. 50-50. We need to drain the lungs and close the tears immediately. But she's weak. If the heart stops, it'll be hard to bring her back. I gripped the edge of the steel table, veins standing out in my hands. Do it. Whatever it takes. The emergency surgery began. Cold white light poured over the small body. Marissa threaded a scope down the airway, the screen filling with brown, murky fluid. The suction machine whined, each sound ripping at my chest. The pup jerked once, then went limp. Heart slowing, the nurse cried. Numbers dropped. 60, 50, 40. I stepped forward and laid my trembling hand on her head. Listen to me. Don't give up. You survived the drain. Don't leave me now. Breathe in. Breathe out. You don't have to be strong alone. I'm here. The numbers flickered. 45, then 55, then 70. Marissa exhaled, hope flashing in her eyes. Keep going. Don't stop. 15 minutes stretched like wire. The last of the fluid was cleared. Her heart steadied. Marissa stitched the torn neck and washed away the corrosive chemicals. Finally, she stepped back, pulling off her gloves, her voice hoarse but relieved. She's still weak, but she's a fighter. If she makes it through tonight, her chances will rise a lot. I collapsed into a chair, eyes burning. The tiny paw, wrapped in gauze, twitched against my finger, a signal of life, fragile yet more beautiful than any verdict I had ever witnessed. I whispered, almost in tears, "Little girl, I kept my promise." And you kept yours. We'll walk out of this darkness together. The Cleveland night pressed down like a block of concrete. I sat motionless in a plastic chair beside the recovery bed, my eyes fixed on the small body wrapped in bandages and tubes. Cold fluorescent light poured over her fur, now just scattered patches of wet black. Beside her, the heart monitor beeped steadily but weakly, each sound stretching my nerves tighter. Dr. Marissa Hale stepped out after finishing the last stitch. She laid a hand gently on my shoulder. She'll have to fight through the night. Her heart is still weak, We'll keep her warm, run fluids, and administer antibiotics, but the rest depends on her will." I nodded, unable to speak. Her words echoed the same ones I had heard doctors tell grieving families years ago. "We've done all we can. Now we wait." I leaned closer, whispering into her ear, "Little girl, I'm here. Sleep if you must, but don't leave. Tomorrow is waiting for you." The clock hands crept like they meant to mock me. By midnight, the clinic was silent, save for the wind slipping through the door frame and the soft hiss of the ventilator. I braced my elbows on my knees, one hand resting lightly on her back, feeling every small tremor, proof she hadn't surrendered. At one point, her oxygen dipped to 85. My chest clenched. The nurse adjusted the mask and pushed more fluids. All I could do was whisper, over and over, "Breathe in, breathe out. You don't have to do this alone. I'll carry it with you." Those words were nothing less than a prayer. And maybe, in that sterile white room, they were the truest prayers I'd ever spoken. Around 3 a.m, I dozed for a moment, my head slumped against the bed. When I woke, something was different. A tiny tail, swaddled in bandages, twitched. So weak, but it moved. My heart slammed in my chest. Her eyes cracked open, half clouded, half clear, searching the room. I leaned in, my voice hoarse. "Lumen, is that you? Can you hear me?" Her gaze drifted, then settled on me. A thin breath escaped, like a sigh from someone just pulled out of the abyss. I slipped my hand through the glass and touched her tiny paw. It curled, then pressed down against my finger. Fragile, but sure. Marissa turned at that exact moment, saw it and smiled, her aging eyes glowing. "She wants to live." That's the best sign we could hope for right now. I nodded, eyes burning. I had seen enough darkness, murders, shattered lives, to know its weight. But in that moment, one small creature gripping my finger was enough to prove that darkness never fully wins. Time edged toward dawn. Her numbers steadied, 92, 95, 98. Her heartbeat was stronger, steadier, like a slow rhythm carrying her forward. I stayed where I was, refusing to close my eyes, determined not to miss a single fragile breath. Morning broke. The first rays slipped through the frosted glass, falling across the small body now sleeping peacefully, no longer trembling. I stroked her head, my voice shaking like a vow. "You've made it through the long night. And from this day on, you'll never walk alone again. I swear it." Marissa laid her hand on my shoulder and nodded. "If she's survived the night, then from now on, hope belongs to her." I sat there, watching the sunlight spill across fur that still smelled faintly of antiseptic. And for the first time in years, I felt warmth in my chest that justice alone had never been able to give. Morning sunlight filtered through the frosted glass, washing the recovery room in a pale, golden warmth. I was still in the plastic chair, back aching, but for the first time in years, my heart felt lighter. Inside the glass chamber, Lumen curled up, breathing steady, her tiny tail tapping against the blanket like a drumbeat announcing victory. Dr. Marissa walked in, smiling. "Mister, Hayes, she's made it. From now on, it's just care, medicine, and love. She'll be fine." I leaned forward, pressed my forehead against the glass, my eyes blurring. "Do you hear that, Lumen? You did it." A sudden knock at the door. Chen and Riley stepped in, coats still dusted from the street. Riley held up a folder, his eyes firm. "We have a warrant." Early this morning, the unit raided the compound behind Silas's house. You were right. More than a dozen dogs locked up, rusted cages, filthy water. They're safe now, all being taken to rescue. I nodded, feeling as though the last dark chapter had closed. Good. They deserve sunlight, not shadows. Chen placed a hand on my shoulder, his voice warm. You did well, Hayes. Without you, no one would have heard that faint cry. I pressed my lips tight, swallowing the lump in my throat. All those years on the force, I'd seen too much senseless death. But today, I'd witnessed a small miracle, and that miracle was enough to make an old heart believe in goodness again. A week later, I returned to the clinic with a form in my hand. Dr. Marissa read it, then smiled. Are you sure about this, Frank? Raising a pup, especially one that's been through all this, won't be easy. I looked up at Lumen, now strong enough to stumble across the grass behind the clinic, her eyes glistening, still carrying a trace of haze but brimming with life. She lifted her head, saw me, then bounded forward on clumsy legs, tumbling once before rising again. I dropped to my knees, arms open, catching her small body. She pressed her head against my chest, tail wagging furiously, as if the world held no fear anymore. I whispered, voice breaking. I've never been more sure. You've already chosen me. Lumen Marissa chuckled, her eyes wet. Then, congratulations. She's officially yours. The day I brought Lumen home, Cleveland was brisk, but golden sunlight covered the streets. Neighbors stood on their porches, a few calling out. I carried her in my arms, small but heavy with meaning. For years I had lost faith in my work, in people, but a trembling puppy in the dark had pulled me back. That night, in my familiar red brick house, I laid a warm blanket by the armchair and set Lumen down. She burrowed in, eyes half closed. I sat beside her, hands clasped, feeling tears I couldn't hold back. Not tears of grief, tears of gratitude. I looked at her, my voice unsteady. Little girl, you didn't just survive. You saved me. You gave me a reason to believe again, that light still exists, even in a city full of shadows. Lumen cracked her eyes open, her tail tapping softly against the floor, as if she understood every word. And if you're hearing this story, maybe your heart aches somewhere too. Remember, not every cry is loud enough for the world to hear. Sometimes it's just a faint whimper from a storm drain, easily lost in the wind. But if you stop, if you listen, if you reach out, you can change a destiny. I heard Lumen's cry, and I didn't turn away. Now it's your turn. If your heart trembles even a little, the way mine did that night, then you understand. The life of one small dog can change the heart of a person completely. Have you ever saved a dog's life? If you have, share your story in the comments. Because maybe, just maybe, your story will reach someone out there. Someone who will also stop, listen, reach out, and save a trembling soul in the dark. Don't let dogs be abandoned and alone. They deserve love, they deserve life, and they deserve to be part of a family. If Lumen's story touched you, I invite you, as a true friend, to subscribe to the channel. Tap the bell, not to raise numbers, but so together we can spread more of these small miracles. Let's make this place a shared home, where every rescue story is a candle, joining others to form a light bright enough to pierce even the darkest corners. Thank you for listening, for shedding tears with me, and for keeping your heart open.